Hello, welcome back to Train Videos with Chaotic Auras. I'm going to be doing the first really quick rundown, quick video, quick attack style. This would be a Patreon episode if I had made any others before. Yeah, this one's going to go up for free on the channel. Everything else is going to be an unlisted link that goes directly to Patreons. Patrons will get it for 90 days, and then it'll go up live on YouTube. But I'm going to try to do these regularly. Normally, I would have Comrade Tom here and Zach with me, but everyone's kind of busy, so I want to keep the momentum for the channel going, and I'm going to knock this one out for you real quick. So, what you're looking at here are a couple of GP Series locomotives in my hometown of Dothan, Alabama. This is a Warren Calloway photo, and dude has horrible politics, but what an impressive collection of photography over his lifetime. I'm going to be honest, this guy has seen every railroad ever. It's genuinely impressive. But yeah, I've smoked weed right here where these engines are parked at. That siding is no longer connected, but it is still there. So, what is the Bay Line? The Bay Line, founded as a corporation February 14, 1906, by Mr. A.B. Steele with the intentions of building a railroad to connect from Atlanta, Georgia to Panama City, Florida, which was starting to become a major port on the Gulf and was a big tourist destination, as it still is to this day. Okay, so 1908, the first trains start rolling. Railroad lasted in its original form from 1908 to 1994, and it was actually, for most of its history, considered a Class 1 railroad, which at the time was a much easier thing to do. Um, it's like it's kind of like being a professional streamer in 2009 compared to now. The standards were a little different. So it was originally a Class 1. Now it's, I want to say it's technically a Class 3, but it's a 100-mile railroad and it moves a shit ton of freight. So really and truly, it's pretty close to a Class 2 if it doesn't hit it financially. So the name, Atlanta and St. Andrews Bay Railway. St. Andrews Bay is a bay in Panama City. It's a major community there in that area as well. The railroad does not go all the way to the water, although it did connect to an Air Force base near the Gulf. The Atlanta in the name was never reached. Central of Georgia wanted nothing to do with it because here, if you see my mouse here in the back side of the photo, going that way is the interchange with CSX, and then with what at one point was Central of Georgia. Central of Georgia did not want competition, being a Southern Railway subsidiary. They also had the lawyers to back them up, so the charter was never completed. But Bayline did manage a fully air-conditioned passenger train, one of the first in the South, if not the first. In the early 1930s, you could take a train from Panama City to Atlanta via Dothan, Albany, Georgia, and Macon, Georgia. Fully air conditioned. Now, obviously, their power didn't run the whole way. You know, it ran under Southern or Central Georgia power further along. So, anyways, the Bay Line operated successfully during World War II. They dieselized, and then the Army was like, yeah, you thought, and took the diesels away for use in the war effort. So while for like a week they were the first Class 1 to fully dieselize, it was immediately taken away. After the war, they got their locomotives back. Steam was over. Bayline had a reputation for extreme care of their locomotives. They had first order RS series locomotives from Alco that lasted into the 90s. Then went to a sister railroad, Hartford and Slocum, and one is actually two are preserved. One works for Conrad Yelverton, and the other is at Tennessee Valley Railway Museum. Both original Bayline locomotives, both still exist. The one in Tennessee was Hartford Slocum after Bayline. The one for Conrad Yelverton went to another sister railroad, the Chattahoochee Industrial. Third was preserved in Panama City at a college, but was unfortunately scrapped a few years ago. So, 1971, Bayline builds a 7-mile branch line to Graceville, Florida, to connect with the L&N. It's not often that late in the game you're seeing new lines being built. Unfortunately, in 1984, L&N pulled out their line to Graceville, though. This was mostly like grain, farm products, and a syrup plant, so this was abandoned in the 90s. There is a Bayline Park in Graceville. The line was pulled, but the small yard was donated to the city and turned into a park. So Bayline had TOFC service, which is interesting. That's trailer on flat car in 1962. This is the first version of intermodal. So you had trailers hopping up and down the Bayline on flat cars, and Hartford and Slocum, they're a sister, well, technically not a sister railroad. They were owned by separate people, but they relied on each other. More so, HS relied on Bayline to exist, and Bayline made money off them. But they all had a trailer on flat car service, which is pretty neato to think about because you absolutely do not have that now. Although there are talks of building a transload for intermodal and a couple other things in Panama City that have yet to pan out. So, 1989, Stone Container Corporation, who had taken control of the Bayline, purchased a branch line off CSX from Grimes, just north of the Dothan Interchange Yard, to Abbeville, Alabama, and then over the years chopped it back from Abbeville to just south of town, and has since started rebuilding the line in the last few years. But anyway, so they buy this branch and then operate it technically as a separate entity with Bayline Power. Trains get off on the CSX interchange, run via trackage rights a couple miles, and then would run that branch. And then in 1996, it was merged in formally as part of the Bayline. I actually worked on that job for about 2 months when I worked for Genesee and Wyoming several years ago. And the original C of G and Hartford Slocum branch lines in Dothan were both purchased by Genesee and Wyoming in 2005 along with the Bayline, and they are operated as on paper separate railroads, but they share crews and power. So the HS, the Hilton and Albany, excuse me, the HS, the Abbeville and Grimes and Bayline, and the Chattahoochee Bay, which is the old Central of Georgia, all operate together. And then Chattahoochee Bay interchanges with Hilton and Albany and Chattahoochee Industrial, which are both also Genesee and Wyoming properties just across the Georgia line. So I've worked all of those jobs at least once. It's a fun time. Okay, so 1994, Rail Management Corporation acquires the Bayline and creates a new company. It is no longer the Bayline. It is, or excuse me, it's no longer Atlanta and St. Andrews Bay. It is the Bayline. It's a little confusing. So, Stone Container had it for a brief time. They sold the assets, and it kind of just bounced from small holding company to small holding company. And that's the real history of this railroad. It's always been successful. It's been a paper mill road, mainly. So originally it was owned by a private investor, then the mill was built, the mill bought the railroad, and then it really just bounced from whatever parent company owned the paper mill over and over again, and then eventually the assets were sold to a private rail holding company, and that's the story. It was operated as a solo entity for a very long time. Some of the best paint schemes you could ever ask for here. Coolest locomotives. So their main shops and headquarters are in Panama City, Florida. And you will see a myriad of power to this day. There's still one Bayline engine left in green paint on the road. The rest is Genesee and Wyoming. But you will see Toledo, Peoria, and Western, New England Central, Utah Railways. I mean, it's you literally never know what's going to end up on Bayline, which not only is common with Genesee and Wyoming, it's more common with one of the major rebuild shops anywhere on G&W being in Panama City. The shops in Panama are kind of really and truly famous all over for their ability to rebuild and maintain locomotives. They do an excellent job and always have. So, yep, that's it. That's the quick rundown on the Bayline Railroad. They haul rock, grain, plastic pellets, paper products, feed, steel, pipes. It's a good railroad. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this, and there'll be more to come.